I woke up in a hospital bed alone. My parents chose a restaurant reservation over their daughter in the ICU. That was their biggest mistake. Because I didn't just survive, I destroyed everything they loved. And I'd do it again. Let me take you back to the moment that changed everything. I woke up to the sterile smell of disinfectant and the steady beep of a heart monitor. My head throbbed and my vision was blurry. As my eyes adjusted to the harsh fluorescent lights, I saw a nurse checking my for drip. "Welcome back, Ms. Carter," she said softly. "You gave everyone quite a scare. You collapsed at work. Your blood sugar dropped dangerously low and you had a severe panic attack. You've been out for almost 6 hours, 6 hours." The words echoed in my foggy brain. I tried to sit up, but my body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Your colleagues called 911 immediately," the nurse continued. "We've been trying to reach your emergency contacts. Your parents. They were notified." My heart sank. Of course they were notified. They were still listed as my emergency contacts because I'd never bothered to change them. Why would I? Despite everything, some pathetic part of me still hoped that one day they'd care. Did they? "Are they coming?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. The nurse's expression shifted, a flicker of pity crossing her face. "They said they couldn't make it. Something about a prior commitment. Prior commitment." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd collapsed at work, been rushed to the hospital, and they had a prior commitment. I shouldn't have been surprised. This was exactly who they'd always been. The nurse left, and I was alone with my thoughts and the monotonous beeping of machines. That's when my phone buzzed. With shaking hands, I reached for it on the bedside table. Instagram notification. My sister, Madison. I opened the app and there it was. A photo of my parents, Madison and her husband at some upscale restaurant. The caption read, "Family dinner at the Meridian. Nothing better than quality time with the people who matter most. #blessed, #family first, #living my best life family dinner." While I was in the hospital, while I'd been unconscious and alone, I scrolled through the comments. Dozens of people congratulating them, calling them goals, asking about the restaurant. Not a single mention of me. Not that I expected one. I'd been erased from their family narrative 3 years ago. It started when I refused to give up my career to work at my father's company. Madison had married into wealth, become the perfect socialite daughter they'd always wanted. I'd chosen to build my own path as a marketing consultant. That was my first sin. The second was refusing to lie for Madison when she'd embezzled money from a charity she ran. I'd found the evidence accidentally and couldn't stay silent. Instead of facing consequences, Madison cried to our parents, twisted the story, and painted me as the jealous sister trying to ruin her life. They believed her. They always believed her. After that, I was slowly cut out. Fewer calls. Missed birthdays. Excluded from holidays. It hurt less when I stopped expecting anything from them, but this was a new low. I took a screenshot of the post, noting the timestamp. 7:43 p.m., just 20 minutes ago. Which meant they'd been at that restaurant since at least 6:30. They'd gotten the call about my hospitalization around 4 p.m. and decided dinner reservations were more important. Something inside me shifted. The hurt transformed into something cold and crystalline, clarity. I'd spent years trying to win back their love, trying to prove myself, trying to be enough. I was done. Over the next 2 days in the hospital, I made calls. I reached out to old colleagues, former clients. People I'd helped build their brands and reputations. I'd been good at my job before stress and anxiety had brought me to my knees. Now it was time to be better. "Rachel," my former mentor, David, said when I called. "I heard about your collapse. Are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "David, I need a favor. Remember that crisis management strategy we discussed last year? I'm ready to implement it. But this time, it's personal." When I was discharged, I didn't go home immediately. I went to a coffee shop and opened my laptop. Research had always been my forte. Within an hour, I had everything I needed. Madison's charity, Golden Hearts Foundation, had a pristine public image. She'd built it after marrying into the Wellington family, using it as her personal brand. What the public didn't know was that Golden Hearts had some interesting financial discrepancies. I'd discovered them years ago, but back then, I'd been talked out of reporting them. Not anymore. I compiled every piece of evidence I'd kept. Bank statements, email exchanges, expense reports that didn't add up. Madison had been funneling charity funds into personal accounts, disguising luxury purchases as operational expenses, that designer handbag collection, donor money, the renovation of her second home, charity funds earmarked for homeless shelters. But I didn't go to the authorities. Not yet. That would have been too quick to clean. I went to the press, specifically to Emma Richardson, an investigative journalist I'd worked with on a previous client project. Emma had a reputation for thorough, devastating exposes. This is explosive, Emma said, reviewing the documents. But why now? You've had this information for years. Because I'm done protecting people who wouldn't cross the street to visit me in a hospital. I said simply, the article dropped on a Tuesday morning. Golden Hearts. Dark Deeds, How Society Darling Madison Wellington Betrayed Donors' Trust splashed across the digital front page of one of the city's most read publications. My phone exploded. Madison called 17 times. My mother called, screaming about family loyalty. My father sent a text, "You've gone too far." I blocked them all, but I wasn't finished. Next, I targeted my father's company. He'd built his reputation as an ethical businessman, a pillar of the community. What people didn't know was that his company had been engaging in questionable labor practices at their overseas facilities. I'd learned about it through a former employee who'd reached out to me months ago, hoping I could help expose it. I connected that employee with a labor rights organization and a different journalist. This story took longer to develop, but when it broke, it was nuclear. Carter Industries, profit over people, ran in a major national newspaper. The stock price plummeted. Investors pulled out. The company my father had spent 30 years building was suddenly under federal investigation. Madison's husband's family quietly distanced themselves from her. The Wellington name couldn't be associated with scandal. She was effectively exiled from the social circles she'd built her identity around. I watched it all unfold from my newly rented apartment across town. I'd left my old job, started my own consulting firm specializing in crisis management and reputation rebuilding. Ironically, several of my parents' former associates reached out, hoping I could help them manage their own PR disasters. I was selective about who I helped. 3 months after my collapse, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Madison, she looked different. Smaller somehow. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by something off the rack. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Rachel," she said, her voice cracking, "please. We need to talk." "No, we don't," I replied calmly, not looking up from my computer. "I lost everything. My marriage is over. Mom and Dad's company is bankrupt. We're losing the house. All because of you." Now I looked up. "No, Madison. All because of you. Because of your greed, your lies, your complete lack of integrity. I just made sure the truth came out. We're family." She cried. "Family?" I stood up, walking around my desk to face her. "Family shows up when you're in the hospital. Family doesn't steal from charities. Family doesn't frame their sister and destroy her reputation to save themselves. You taught me what family isn't, Madison. And I'm grateful for the lesson." "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything. I don't doubt that you're sorry now. Now that you've lost everything. But you weren't sorry when you had everything and I had nothing. You weren't sorry when I was alone in that hospital room while you posed for Instagram photos. What do you want from me?" Madison asked desperately. "Nothing," I said. "I don't want anything from you or Mom or Dad ever again. That's the point. You're finally experiencing what it feels like to be invisible to the people who are supposed to love you. How does it feel?" She left without another word. My mother tried next, showing up at my office building, unable to get past security without an appointment. She called from the lobby, her voice alternating between angry and pleading. "Your father had a heart attack," she said. "The stress of everything. He's in the hospital. He wants to see you." I felt a twinge. Just a small one. The daughter I used to be would have dropped everything and rushed to his bedside. "Which hospital?" I asked. She told me. I recognized it. "One of the best cardiac facilities in the state. I collapsed at St. Mary's," I said. "It's not as nice. The food is terrible and the chairs in the rooms are uncomfortable. I know because I sat alone in one for 2 days." "Did he ask about me then?" "Rachel, please, tell him I have a prior commitment." I hung up. That night, alone in my apartment, I did cry. Not for them, but for the family I'd wished I had. For the parents who should have come when I needed them. For the sister who should have been my best friend instead of my worst enemy. But I didn't regret what I'd done. Not for a second. 6 months later, my business was thriving. I'd hired a small team, moved into a better office, and started getting calls from major corporations. My reputation as someone who could handle sensitive situations with precision and discretion had spread. I'd also started therapy, finally addressing the anxiety and people-pleasing tendencies that had led to my collapse. I learned to set boundaries, to prioritize my own well-being, to understand that I'd been seeking validation from people who were never going to give it. One evening, I received a handwritten letter, my father's handwriting, shaky but recognizable. Inside, he'd written, "You were right about everything. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. You're stronger than any of us ever were." I read it 3 times, then filed it away. Maybe one day I'd respond, maybe I wouldn't. The difference was, I no longer needed his approval to feel whole. I'd learned the hardest lesson life can teach. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve. And sometimes revenge isn't about destroying others, it's about rebuilding yourself. From the ashes of their abandonment, they'd left me alone in that hospital room. Thinking I was broken, they were wrong. I'd never been stronger.